Hope you're enjoying your snow day. I wanted to get through this PowerPoint with you so that we don't lose any time. And I know we started it last class, so if you would, for homework, take out your European exploration notes where you were taking handwritten notes and continue on with that until you finish them. So I want to review just a little bit over the slides we already did. We talked about the age of exploration, why European nations wanted to explore, what helped them to explore. We talked about the 3 Gs, gold, glory, and God, and all of these different reasons why they were able to explore, specifically with their new technology, improvement in maritime technology, including the compass, cartography, knowledge of tides, and new ships. So Portugal is going to lead the way, and they're going to lead the way, including using the new technology of caravels, which uses lateen sails and square sails to help them navigate. These are some pictures of those ships. Then we talked about how China did send out one expedition with Zheng He, and he sailed around to different parts of the Indian Ocean trade networks, pretty much to show China's wealth. But then China is going to, once he gets back, they're going to discontinue Chinese exploration because it was too expensive, because they kind of wanted to stick to themselves and not get involved with what was going on in the outside world. So when China stops, it gives Europe an opportunity to begin sailing. Spain and Portugal are going to lead the way because of their location close to the Atlantic, their recent consolidation under monarchy, and their innovations that they're going to use. So we talked about Prince Henry the Navigator, who's most famous for opening a navigational school. And with that, we're going to see a lot of Portuguese explorers use that knowledge, not necessarily to go to the Americas right away, but to find a route to Asia through going around Africa. So he is going to lead a couple expeditions and send some expeditions. They don't make it too far, but he makes it to more of the Gold Coast of Africa, and we start to see African kingdoms willing to work with the Portuguese, including trade. They wanted a lot of products that were coming from Europe. And we talked about a couple of other Portuguese explorers. This one, Bartholomew Diaz, you might need to know for the SOL. He was the one that got to the bottom of Africa, the tip of Africa, the Cape of Good Hope, but didn't bring enough supplies, so he had to return home. But he's going to give a lot of good information to the Portuguese, and that's going to allow Vasco da Gama to lead the first successful expedition from Europe to India. He's going to return home with a bunch of goods, and he's going to inspire other Portuguese to start sailing that same route to India. And we start to see that these are all their routes here. We start to see Portugal kind of becoming the leader in these expeditions, specifically in Africa, where they're going to get certain trade partners, especially along the Gold Coast and in the Indian Ocean. So we call them a trading post empire. They didn't have a lot of land, but what they did have were very, very key trading ports, and that creates somewhat of an empire for them to be successful in controlling the Indian Ocean trade routes, and as it says here, making it their own private property. It negatively affects the Indian Ocean trade routes, which were prosperous on their own without Portuguese influence, and so we'll talk a little bit about that more later in the unit. They're going to use a lot of their money to colonize Brazil, which they're allowed to colonize with the Treaty of Tordesillas. We'll talk about that on another slide. And they had little impact on other empires because they were pretty much just on the coast. So these are some of the main cities that they were able to colonize and use as for their trading post empire. So you can see they made it all the way to Southeast Asia, China, and Japan even. And that's going to kind of cause those regions to want to stay isolated because they learn that Europeans are coming in and they don't want it to continue happening. So this is what their empire looked like. In terms of their success, they're going to spur a competition between the European nations. Spain is going to start sending expeditions to what they think is the Indies, but it ends up being the Americas. That's going to make England and France want to join, and they start to rival Spain in the Americas. And then eventually the English and the Dutch are going to start challenging Portugal's power over the Indian Ocean. So it's interesting, Portugal starts this influx into the Indian Ocean, and then the English and Dutch are going to kick them out, and they're going to compete with each other. And then later in the unit, we'll learn that the English start to dominate the Indian Ocean trade.